Good morning, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I've got a lot of great stuff to go over today, and starting with the stats like I always do. And we now include Lake, Orange, Osceola, Polk, and Seminole all in one. And basically when it comes down to the single-family residence, which we're going to look at first, is that the median price decreased by $5,000 from $397 to $392. And the number of properties that sold went from 667 to 725 for the week. So a pretty good number when you come down to it and you're looking at it. When you're looking at the single family homes then and how everything shakes out, for them, you do have that under the 725, there were 56 of them under 250 that sold, 78 between 250 and 300, 248 between 300 and 400, which is pretty significant, 162 between 400 and 500, 151 between 500 and a million, and 30 of them over a million. So basically, when it comes down to it and you're looking at it, obviously the between 300 and 400 was about a third of all of the properties that sold. And so and the median price being right in that 392,000, I believe it was, that basically comes down to that, kind of makes sense that that's where we are at. Now, the average days on the market is a total of 74 right now, is what's going on with that. So what that means, in my opinion, we're kind of in a normal market when you look at the inventory that we've got based on the number of houses that sell. And so what it comes down to is that it looks like in our market at this point in time, if you are a seller and you price it appropriately, it's going to sell. And it's going to sell pretty quickly when it's priced appropriately. But the challenge is many times with sellers is getting to that price. A lot of times sellers think, oh, I can just go ahead and try it and it's not going to hurt it or anything like that. And I always tell people, I think one of the worst things that is out there for the public to see is the days on the market. And the reason is because if you weren't looking 50 days ago, it didn't matter what was on the market at that point in time for you. And, if this is the perfect house for you, it doesn't matter that all the other people passed up on it because it was the perfect house for you. It only takes one person to do it. And so basically to purchase it. And so, when you're pricing it appropriately, you're going to get more people in it. We have a price strategy document that when you look at that, what that actually does is it allows us to go ahead and, we show you that if you were at market value, that only 60% of the people that might buy your house are going to come and see it. But if you price it 15% below, you're going to have 90% that are going to come and see it. And conversely, if you go ahead and you price that property 15% above market value, you're only going to get 10% of the people that come and see it. So with our marketing and everything that we do, we know that if we're not getting showings, that it has something to do with the price. And unfortunately, because the multiple listing service, Zillow, Realtor.com, all those websites out there tell you how many days it's on the market. When you start it out high and put it low, it does not do you any favors. And so I always think it's better for you to go ahead and price it properly to begin with, and then you're not going to run into any problems. And what we found is that you actually get above asking price if you do price it at the right place, generally, even in this market. And we can prove it to you time and time again and show you that that's definitely what happens. I was explaining to somebody this week that there's a realtor out there that back in the day in 2009, 10, 8, 9, 10, really, that had a lot of foreclosure homes that they listed, and all of them went about 3 or 4% above market value, above what they were listed at. And so I investigated to see what was going on, and they actually put them on the market at about 2% below what the market was. And as a result of that, they had a lot of people that looked at the houses. They had a lot of offers, and so they created an auction type atmosphere on almost every one of those listings, and they all went for above asking price. So I just think that's a great way to go. The market is what the market is, and it's going to always, no matter if I think my house is worth $1 million or $100,000, or somewhere there in between. Basically, the bottom line is that the market is going to come back and tell me exactly what it's worth, and that's what's so great, I think, in regards to pricing. It's like you can ask whatever you want. And sorry about my voice today, but I was talking to somebody earlier this week, and I was explaining to them that if you went ahead and you listed your home at 50% of whatever the value was, you would get a lot of people in there, and it would drive it up to market. And I've seen this happen time and time again, because basically you're going to get enough eyeballs on it that you're going to get all of the people out there that are willing to buy it, and you're going to create that auction atmosphere, and it's going to go way up. And as you know, if you have gone to an auction, they don't start the price at the top. They start the price in the middle or at the bottom or somewhere like that, and then they actually drive it up. And that's really my favorite way of selling real estate. Every seller doesn't let me do it. But basically the bottom line is that I think it's a really good way of doing it, of pricing your property competitively to get people into it. And especially with the inventory and everything that we've got now, that basically it takes it so that we've got, I think 4 or 5 months of inventory. I didn't figure out that stat this week when it comes to the single family residences. But when it comes to the condos and townhouses, they basically are looking in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 months of inventory. So you really have to be aggressive when it comes down to that and looking at it. When it does come to condos and townhouses, the median sales price went from $308,500 to $305,000 in the last week. And so the number of properties that sold last week were 152 of them. So looking at that, just pulling out this little paper right here to let me know that. Okay, so of the 254, there were 51 of them under 250, 25 between 250 and 300, 56 between 300 and 400, 30 between 400 and 500, 15 between 500 and a million, and one of them over a million. So there were, like I said, 154 that sold last week, and there are a total of 1728 on the market. So just doing really quick math, I've got there 600. No, that's the average square foot. I'm so sorry. I don't see the number of properties that are on the market here. I'll have to look that up and find that out. But last time I looked, we were in the neighborhood of about 8 to 9 months supply. And so that's obviously, you've got to be aggressive when it comes to that. Now, looking at the long-term leases that are going on in our area as well, basically, the overall long-term leases, the median price is $2,200. For a single-family residence, it's $2,300, and the condos and townhouses are at $1,750. Okay, so basically, when you're looking at that, if you're an investor and you're going, well, does it make sense for me to come out there and do and purchase some property and rent it out and that kind of stuff? We do all those analysis up front, so you know what your ROI is going to be. One of my favorite things for an investor is multi-unit building, because you can kind of kill a lot of birds with one stone. Sometimes they're not too much more expensive than if you would buy one single family home, but you would have multiple units. And it's an area that I really should, next week I think I'll do that, where I'll show the stats on those. But that's something that doesn't get as many eyeballs on it, because people are generally looking at the single family home, the condos kind of market. They're all falling in under residential, and the multifamily have their own category. And so as a result of that, everybody's not looking at them. So there's less competition when it comes for them. And so a lot of times there are more options and that kind of thing. The other thing that you need to know when it comes to multifamily, if you are looking to maybe live in one of the units and then rent out the rest of them, that you can actually get an FHA loan that will allow you to buy up to 4 units that's in a building. Obviously you own the building and that kind of stuff, but you can get an FHA loan as long as you live in one of them. So there are some options out there for you that might be something that you want to consider if you're an investor, and it might be a good thing for you. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I'm going to get into some things on fraud in regards to what's going on out there. I think we all run into it. This article that I ran into said 68% of Americans have faced financial fraud in the last year. And but the good news was that more than 57% of the survey respondents said the attempts were unsuccessful. So that's good. Most people have been scammed at some point, and now many take precautions in order to avoid it, obviously. And fraud is not immune to real estate and everything that happens there. I did a couple of years ago run into a situation where I was dealing with someone that was fraudulent, that was saying that they had properties to sell, and never met them. They were from another area of the state and everything, and then so I did ask for their driver's license and that kind of stuff, which they sent in, which matched the owner of the property as well as the address and everything of where they lived. And so, I did the best that I could in regards to, knowing and thinking that it was the same that it was the person who actually owned the property. And, the bottom line is that we did end up selling a property that was fraudulent with somebody fraudulently who had purchased it or who had sold it. And so there were a lot of people that were affected by that. And what ended up happening is that the title insurance did kick in and paid the buyer back for the property that they had purchased, not from the owner, because the owner did want to keep it. They didn't want to sell it. The owner got the property back and everything. But, there was a lot of things that were going on in regards to that. I was in touch with local law enforcement and then from other parts of the state, and they were actually investigating these people. They had done it more than once. And so, I think they caught them. I gave them all of my paperwork, but I never heard anything more about it in regards to what it was. It's just the kind of thing that you give all your text messages and all that kind of stuff to them, and they were able to trace it. But they even went to the point where they had a bank account with the seller's name on it. And so when the proceeds were sent, they were sent to that person. They did use a notary, obviously, to sign the documents and everything. And, they said they had their own notary, which things have changed a little bit now that, the title company will send a notary to you instead of you using your own notary. But basically what happened is that the notary who was on that was officially a notary. It was not their signature and it was not their stamp. And so somebody had gotten a list of notaries and made themselves a stamp, and as if they were that notary too. So it can be quite involved in regards to what people do to to get away with it and all of that kind of stuff. But obviously, this transaction was on a vacant lot. The owner did not live they lived in Florida, but they didn't live in Central Florida. They lived in the Panhandle. And so they weren't here all the time, seeing it and everything like that. And the interesting thing to me was that the neighbor to this lot came and talked to me and said, hey, I'd be happy to build. This was on a piece of property on a lake, and they said, "Hey, I'd be happy to, know the new neighbors so that maybe we could build a dock together because it was on Lake Toho, and parts of Lake Toho, you have to build a dock out almost 100 feet because the water levels can go up and down so much that you really need to have your boat dock out that far, and it's about $1,000 a foot to build a dock like that. And so, $100,000, they thought, hey, if we could share a dock, going out there, that would be a good thing. And the neighbor talked to him and stuff and said, yeah, I cut this guy's grass because it's right next to my house and my lot, and I like the grass cut, so I don't want it looking wild and stuff like that. And so I thought mistakenly that they had talked to the owner that owned the property multiple times and knew him and all of that kind of good stuff as well, which they hadn't talked to them recently and didn't know that the property was going to be sold fraudulently or that or anything like that. So basically, when it comes down to it, the things that they're doing today is there's obviously wire transfer fraud. You've probably heard of that. Identity theft, not something new. But they do fraudulent escrow companies. So they might set up a fake title company or escrow company that people would give their money to. So that could happen. Phishing and spoofing attacks, we've heard of that. And then advance fee schemes that upfront payments are demanded and that kind of stuff for properties that don't exist. So there's all kinds of things that people are doing, but there are things that you can do to protect yourself against fraud. One of them is to verify wire instructions that always today we tell you when you're at the bank or whatever, call the title company and again, verify the number to make sure that it is correct. You want to use secure communication channels when you're doing sensitive transaction information. You want to make sure that you vet all the parties involved as much as possible and that kind of stuff. You want to invest in title insurance. That's what saved this deal that I had, is that they did have title insurance. And so as a result of that, it made it very simple for, everybody to kind of wash their hands, that we knew that the title company and the title insurance, they got their attorneys and everything involved and talked to me multiple times and that kind of thing as well. But they did know that, that everything was, as far as we could tell, on the up and up. And so they paid the claim. But if they hadn't had that title insurance, it would have been a lot messier. And the seller would have gotten their property back and the buyer would have been out their money. So I think that it would have, it definitely makes sense to have title insurance in those types of situations or any types of situations. You never know what's going to happen. And then you want to educate yourself, which you want to be, know about common fraud schemes such as wire fraud, phishing, and identity theft. And awareness is a powerful first line of defense. And then you might want to monitor your absentee properties. I know that I've heard companies that come out that they have some kind of a title thing on it. So if something happens to the title on a property that you own, it's going to alert you. So there are those services and that kind of thing out there. But just keeping an eye on it and knowing what's going on. If people are from out of town and they own property here, it's always good to have a neighbor or somebody, have a caretaker, have somebody that can keep an eye on the property for them. I know one realtor that I was talking to, he came from another part of the state. And in that part of the state, if the properties are run down, there's tax arrears, there's all kinds of things going on with them. They get court orders and they tear down these houses. Now, obviously, they're not great houses to begin with and that kind of thing. But the interesting thing is that this realtor said that he was talking to the owner of this particular property, and the county had torn it down, and I'm sure they had noticed him, and he didn't know remember or see it, whatever. And, the guy called him and said he wanted to sell it. And he's like, well, I'm standing in front of this address and there is no house here. And the guy was surprised that this wasn't a fraud situation, but it's just if you have property that's in another area, you want to make sure that you have somebody checking it out and you know kind of what's going on, right? And so anyway, so he took a picture, and sure enough, it was a vacant lot today instead of the house that the guy thought it was and everything. So you definitely want to make sure that you protect yourself and that you monitor what's going on. And, there is collaboration that is going on and making sure that we're double checking things. And like I said, in the past, it would have been potentially that you could go ahead and you could send, say, hey, I've got a notary that's a friend, and they'd be like, okay, yeah, go ahead and use them. But today that may not happen because of these types of fraud things that we run into. And so as a result of that, you've just got to have those extra layers of protection, that you've got a notary service of someone that's reputable, that's going out there to sign the documents, that's getting pictures of the driver's license and checking them and all of that kind of good stuff. So it's very interesting, but, people can be on the underhanded side. So we just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to protect you and to protect the public and everything, to make sure that it's a win-win situation for everybody and we're not having any of these fraudulent things that are coming up. And so in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. To discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I was talking a little bit about fraud and everything in the last segment. And there was one more thing that I wanted to talk about in regards to that. And that is just the things that always evolve. Years ago, when I first started in real estate, which is 2005, so this is my 20th year of selling real estate now. But basically, what happened is that back then there was a problem with certified checks. And so what happened with what they've gone to now is they've gone to wires, because what would happen with certified checks is they would not necessarily even bounce until the 10th day. And I had these people that I hadn't met, and this was probably 2006 or 7, somewhere thereabouts. And they had called and they wanted to buy a particular property. And I said, well, do you want to see it? And they said, no, we don't need to see it. And I said, okay, and you're sure you want to put an offer on this property without seeing it? That was kind of, I think, before I even did videos of them at that point in time. I mean, I could send them pictures and that kind of stuff. And they're like, no, that's great. That's what we want. And so right there, you're kind of going, okay, red flag, we'll just kind of see where things go. And so then, we went under contract and everything, and everybody's happy, and they're paying cash for the property. So everybody's happy and all of that. And we were dealing with an attorney. The attorney was actually was doing the title work. And so I said to the attorney talked to the buyer, and the attorney said, hey, how would you like to do this? Do you want to do wire, or do you want to do a certified check? And they said, well, whatever you want. And I'm like telling the attorney, well, I hope you told him a wire. But no, they didn't. They told him a certified check. And so they sent in a certified check that was from a company, that was from another address, that was from another something, but it was a certified check, and it went to the title company or the attorney. And, they put it in the bank and everything like that. But there was something that just fell off on it. And so I said to them, and everybody agreed, let's not make this thing final until we know for sure that check is going to clear. And sure enough, on the 10th day, which for some reason, I don't know why, usually when you put a check in the bank, that somebody puts one of your checks in the bank, how long does it take to clear? 5 minutes, right? But on these certified checks, they took 10 days to clear. And sure enough, on the 10th day, it bounced. And so can you imagine if 8 or 9 days ago before that, they would have transferred the property, the seller would have, potentially, had their money, and I think they would have gotten it from the lender or the lawyer, obviously, and so it probably wouldn't have bounced at that time or anything like that. But then, the sellers sitting there, with this money that bounced, the attorneys with the money that bounced, and it causes obviously a lot of problems and everything down the road. And of course, then you couldn't get a hold of these people again for all the tea in China or anything like that. But basically, it comes down to the bottom line is that, you need to be really careful in what you do. And so when you might get frustrated and say, why no certified checks today for a real estate transaction? And that's exactly why, because it could take 10 days. So what that would mean is that if you gave the title company a certified check, they are going to hold your check, or they're going to put it in the bank, but they're not going to be able to give you that property for 10 days until they know it actually has cleared and closed and all of that kind of good stuff. And so the bottom line is that we went to wire multiple years ago. After that point in time, it was right about that time that things were changing, and there was so much check fraud at that point, even certified checks. So everything looked official. Everything looked like it was on the up and up, but it really was not. And so I think that's just what it comes down to, with where we're at today in this atmosphere where you can pretty much find out anything about anybody, as by, going online and searching and all of that kind of good stuff, that you definitely want to have your I's dotted, your T's crossed in regards to finding out where your property is, that everything is on the up and up. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is something that was a question that someone answered. It says, who keeps co-owned properties? So say you owned a property, with your parent or, with a spouse, it's kind of that it's, automatically that it's going to go to that spouse unless somebody else is on it or something like that. But to ensure family members keep co-owned vacation homes, consider joint tenancy with the right of survivorship and create a co-ownership agreement. So somebody was saying they were buying a vacation home with one of their children and they wanted to take turns using it and split the cost and expenses. We want to make sure that if something happens to the mom, she doesn't have to split the house with the other child, that she doesn't have to split the house with her siblings who she made other arrangements for in the will. What could she do? So when a property is co-owned with someone that's not your spouse, you have two options for ownership. The decision is going to determine the fate of the property upon your death and might influence other right. So the most prevalent method of co-ownership is known as tenants in common, and this is the default way of owning property with others, where each owner holds their share completely. If one owner passes away, their portion will go to their heirs, who will take their places as co-owners. Okay, conversely, if the property is owned as joint tenants with rights of survivorship and one owner dies, the remaining owners retain ownership, effectively inheriting the deceased owner's rights. To own property this way, including a phrase joint tenants with the right of survivorship on the deed, is essential. If you don't see those words on your deed, that means the property is owned as tenants in common and will stay with whoever's heirs on that property. So any joint tenant has the right to deed their share of the property to anyone they choose. However, if a joint tenant transfers their portion to someone not already named on the deed, all owners will become tenants in common. This means the survivorship feature would no longer apply, and it would become important if you'd want to change who gets your share of the property when you pass away. Whenever people who are not married to each other, including parents and children, own property together, they always recommend entering into a written co-ownership agreement. And this type of contract lays out each person's rights and responsibilities and what will happen if one of you wants to sell the property while the other does not. Not only will this take time to think of these issues through in advance to help avoid disputes, but it will also make resolving any dispute that could not be avoided easier and less expensive to resolve. So I thought that was just good advice and something to think about when it comes to your property and what's going on. And so something to consider for sure. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So the question comes up a lot of times, should I remodel my home before I sell, or what should I do? And is it going to come back to me, or how is it going to come back to me? Most projects don't come back to you 100%. I'm going to be honest, but one of them does, and that happens to be a new steel front door. 100% is what they're saying that will come back to you in remodeling. These are the top 12 projects ranked on their estimated cost recover at resale. Closet renovations, you're going to get 83%. New fiberglass front doors, 80%. New vinyl windows are 74%. New wood windows, 71%. Basement conversion to living area is 71%. Not a lot of basements here in Florida. Attic conversion to living area, 67%. Complete kitchen renovation is 60%. Minor kitchen upgrade, again, 60%. Bathroom addition, 56%. New primary suite, 54%. And bathroom renovation, 50%. So basically, the bottom line is, in my opinion, your house in this particular market has to stand out. So there might be things that you might think, hey, I'm remodeling, but it might just be normal maintenance. Like maybe you've got some lines on the wall that yet one time you had a couch there and it left a line on the wall or something like that. Paint will go an awful long way to make your property look Spitfire, clean, good, all of that kind of good stuff. So it's really, really important that you do those kinds of things, for your house, because with the number of properties that are on the market today, people come in and what they see makes a huge difference. So if you want to get top dollar, then that's something that you could do. If you don't necessarily care if you get top dollar or, if you would rather have the convenience, then you don't necessarily have to do it. And there are companies that'll come in and they'll spruce up your house for you. And some of them you can sell after they're spruced up, and they'll add the price that they'll get compensated at the closing table. And then there's other companies that'll just come in and outright buy your house right now, and they'll do those kinds of things and that stuff too. But everything comes at a cost. We have multiple cash companies that do that. There's companies that come in that will buy them outright, and that you're probably going to get maybe a 10-15% reduction on what you could do if you sell it yourself, but they are going to come in and spruce it up, and they have their amounts that they want to make. And then there are some companies that we work with that have a 6% fee, and basically they're going to sell it on the open market. Whatever they get above that 6% is going to go into your pocket. And so there are definitely options, things that you need to look at when it comes to, what you want to do to sell your house. So I always tell everybody the best thing to do is just have someone like myself come over, give you the ideas, let you know what's going on, all that kind of good stuff. And then we can go through it and we can let you know, okay, this is basically the bottom line in regards to how everything works, what it's all going to look like, all that good stuff. And then you're going to have everything that you want in regards to getting out of your house and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the big things, if your house, if you want to remodel the kitchen because you want it for you and you're only going to get 50% out of it, then doesn't it make sense that you would do it now and live in your house for a couple of years if that's what you wanted to do? Because it depends on why you're remodeling the kitchen. If maybe it's dated, there might be a few minor things that you could do to it. But if it's something that things are not working, or you've got water damage or something like that, then obviously, the full remodel needs to be done. But basically, when it comes down to it, I always think that people should enjoy what the upgrades and that kind of thing that they do. That front door, that new front door that comes on there, that's going to add the value to it and everything. If you change out the windows, maybe it's going to reduce your electric bill. So that would be a plus for you as well. So there's all kinds of things out there that you could do, but paint is kind of one of those normal maintenance. So I don't really consider that a remodel, but I would say that you are probably going to get 100% of your value out of that and then some, because even if it's not the color that somebody wants, when they come in there, they go, oh, I don't have to do it today. I can move in, I can live with it, I can figure out the color later, or maybe they're going to come in and do it right away, but they're going to have a fresh landscape that they can put it on there. They don't have to go through all the prep work and all of that kind of stuff to get everything done. So I know that when it comes down to it, everybody has their own preferences in regards to what they like on a particular house, but your house has to look like and be move-in ready for the most part for people. And then they'll pay full price, because they can go, okay, I'm going to spend $10,000, $100,000 or whatever, making it the way that I want it. But I can do that over time. I don't have to do it today. But if they come in there and they see things that need to be done, and then they go, okay, this is the stuff I see. What don't I see? And what am I going to have to do with that? And how much money is it going to cost me? So what they do is they start right away reducing the price, things going down, all of that kind of good stuff. And you're like, oh, why can't I get a full price offer? Well, maybe if you just would have painted the walls and had it look a little bit more inviting, it would have made a big difference. And so we're very honest with you, telling you what to do, what you need to do in order to make things happen. And then we go ahead and we do make things happen with you. So basically the bottom line is that when it comes down to it, you might need another eye on it that lets you know what you want to do. But if you are going to remodel, enjoy it. If it's something that is not working, that's not a remodel as much as a repair. And so you have to do that as well. But if someone comes in and inspects your house and they see that there's, water underneath the kitchen cabinet, for example, they're going to wonder what happened and why is it that way and has it been repaired and did you fix it and all of that kind of good stuff. And all of those things are going to be dollar signs. So there's a difference, in my opinion, between remodel and having it in show-ready condition that actually makes a difference in regards to whether somebody's going to choose your house or whether they're going to choose somebody else's. And so when it comes down to it, you have to put your best foot forward, which is what we always do, is we help you do that to make sure that you have a win-win situation and that you walk out of it with what you want. For example, I've got a lady right now that I'm working with, and she works 12 hours a day. She has some pets and that kind of stuff. And so as a result of that, she was working on a couple of things that she wanted to repair on her house, just painting and stuff like that. But she's finding it too difficult to get that stuff done. And she would prefer to just take that 6% cut and have somebody come in there and take care of it. And then she doesn't have to worry about it and she can move on. So everybody's different with your time, with what you've got going on. What makes sense to you might not make sense to somebody else. But that's the beauty of what goes on in real estate, is that we have plans that can cater to your every need. And as I mentioned to you, we do have a company that can come in there and fix up whatever you need fixing up and get paid at closing. So as a result of that, they manage the whole project. Obviously, they've got all of the contractors, they've got everything. So, you just agree that this is what they're going to do. We all agree together, and this is how much it's going to cost, and this is what they're going to get paid at closing. So if you're in a position where you have a roof, for example, on your house that needs to be replaced, and you're going to sell your house, that might be the way to do it, is have them come in, do the roof, and then when you put it on the market, you got a brand new roof and all of that kind of stuff. And one more thing that I was going to talk about in depth this week, but I'm just going to scratch the surface on it. I was talking to an insurance agent earlier this week. And basically, I was asking if the rates are going down and stuff like that. And she said that yes and no. She said that, they're pretty much stabilized and everything. And if people see a lot lower rates, it's kind of buyer beware. You really need to read the fine print, because she said that in a lot of those contracts, what they're doing is that they are aging the roof out. And so you're going to get, like, maybe if a hurricane comes through and it wrecks the roof, you're going to get like 10% instead of getting 100%, because the roof was 90% aged out anyway. And so just a word of precaution there when it comes to insurance. Make sure that what you think you're getting is what you're actually getting when it comes to insurance. And that comes to anything in life, obviously. But we're out of time for today. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.